here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings and salutations and welcome back to Outside the Sheds. I take a deep breath, Shedheads, because the one thing that I need to go over right now is, have we all recovered from that tussle from last Thursday? I went to go see I guess you would say an osteopath, a guy who worked on your shed as injuries. And I got to tell you, it's the most free I felt probably since, 4 or 5 years. Your shed has been in pain. The reason I bring this up is because the Chooks had been in pain playing the Panthers. And Thursday, I'm wanting to know, and you guys let me know. Heck, I have some listeners down in Sydney who for some reason still think I'm anti-Chook, and I'm not. Dennis, I'm not. But what I'm saying is, we all have those moments where we just feel like we're just so compacted that you can't get free. And like I said, I was in a bad car accident years and years ago. I think we've talked about it on the show before. And I am still trying to get my body moving the right way. Still, you wouldn't know it probably if you saw me walking down the street. But I'm carrying some injuries, and, that's part of life. And the Chookies have been carrying injuries playing Penrith for a very, very long time. And we got that on full display on Thursday. I don't think any of us knew going into it what it was going to be. But before I go into that, let's go over, we went 4 for 8 for round 24. All right, that's 50%. But we're still 95 of 150 for the year. That's 63%. So we're still doing well. We're still making the house payments. We're still doing well. Now, let's go back to what we're talking about. We're talking about me freeing myself up, and we're talking about Thursday night. I will tell you this right now. I had no idea what to expect from that big clash between Penrith and the Chooks. And the thing that made it so beautiful is because you couldn't have more except maybe a grand final on the line. You had two teams that were running at each other. Like they found each other, pointed each other out in the crowd, apex predator, let's go. Toe-to-toe, head-to-head, and they just sprinted across the room at one another. And boy, I'm telling you something, we got one team that is just riding a streak. We got another team that has lost a key member in that locker room that still has the greatest half in the competition, trying to get on top, that it's going to be up to him probably to get them to the promised land. And we got old school footy. That's what we got. Roosters 12, Panthers 6. Chookies break that 1 of 13 hoodoo, whatever you want to say. I don't know if you can say it's a full hoodoo if you've at least won 1 of 13. It wasn't kind of like Andy Roddick, playing against Roger Federer back in the day, where you can't even really call it a rivalry when it's so one-sided. They got at least one, right? They got one. They got one. But it was just, like I said, must-watch television. And if you were in that stadium, it had to just be totally exhilarating, because it wasn't the new school footy where you're just running up and down the field. This was a finals-type feeling match. And getting to see the big players come to the head, and I will say this, for Penrith, I know they lost the match. A lot of people have been talking about Isaiah Yeo being a huge factor of why this team is not, maybe hasn't looked the same without the guy. I will say something, and this is going to be a big statement, big stance that I'm making right now. I think Casey McLean being out of the side and not being on that side with Milky is just as important almost as what Isaiah Yeo has brought to the table. And I know people are going to be freaking out right now. Shedheads, calm down. But I mean that. This team is not the same without Casey McLean in the starting lineup. They just aren't. They are offensively different. It changes that side. Milky's not the same player when he isn't with Casey. I think that's a totally different match if Casey McLean's in there. Almost as much as Isaiah Yeo being in there, because you were gonna need some type of offense to get into and score tries. And when you have a Penrith side that can only muster one try, you needed offense. And to me, Casey McLean would have brought that. It's good to know that he's coming back, but I think that was the X factor that was not on the field and allowed the Chooks, even though they played great. DCE rolls back the clock. We're going to go in a deep dive about this guy here in a second, but it was a big victory. And like I said, I know during this time of year there's no team that's 100% healthy. You just can't be. They just can't be. It's rugby league, you know. But Casey McLean coming back, if he stays healthy, the Panthers are a different side. But huge victory, and I'm not taking anything away from the Sydney Roosters. That was an incredible victory. They earned it. It's 8 on the trot now. Beautiful stuff. But I can't wait to see now what Penrith looks like this weekend going up against the Storm with McLean back. I guarantee you they're going to be a different offensive side. Dolphins 22, Sea Eagles nothing. Finns go to Manly and invade the fortress. Brookvale has been breached. And I'm going to say something right now. They look good, the Finns. They flipped into the top 4. When they went straight flipper. They're in the top 4 now. The Dolphins, the Finns. I still stand by that no club has won the whole thing, the whole shebang, that have allowed 50 points in a game during the season. I don't think that changes. No matter how well the Dolphins are playing, I don't think they have the goods to win the whole thing. I don't think they're better than the Waz. I don't think they're better than Penrith. I don't think they're better than Sydney, the Chookies. And I'll say this right now, that my wild card of this bunch of the top 8 right now are the Knights. I think the Knights are gonna do something to somebody no one sees coming, except for maybe me, right? I just said it, but big victory, great victory, 22-0. It is crazy, and Manly is another part of the deep dive we're about ready to go into because I've got a really strange stat that I didn't see, but it's. But when I point it out to you guys are going to be a little dumbfounded. Rabbitohs 22, Bulldogs 6, key showdown. That was maybe the most important match of the round because we knew that the Chooks and the Panthers were going to get into the finals. But that match that we watched there, that the Rabbitohs took them to school, might have been the most important match of the round. And the Bulldogs, once again, do not come through. And I'm not trying to call Canterbury out on the mat here, but when you cannot get your spine under control, you're just not going to be able to do things when it comes down the stretch. Just as the case. And I know Critter had been a good fill-in up to this point, but you need a 7. You need a real 7 in there. And you can only kind of cover that Band-Aid, that wound, so much without the true 7 being in the side. But David Fafita looked great, didn't he? Wow. And with some rumblings coming out of South Sydney, we'll go into a little bit later, you wonder if the Rabbitohs might look really scary down the stretch. But big victory there. They are now, I think, 1 win away from really locking down that they're going to be in the finals. But, again, the old Wayne Bennett boys are still there. Raiders 24, Sharks 20. I got to tell you something. Cronulla's picking a horrible time of the year to lose confidence and to become mediocre. And I know a lot of people are saying, like, I don't know, Shedda, if they're really mediocre. You just cannot lose to the teams they're losing to right now. And I know, hey, this is nothing against the Green Machine, but Cronulla should not have lost last week to the Dragons. And that could be something that haunts them for a while. It really will be. I think that this is the moment right now. This coming weekend is going to be the moment where we really figure out if Cronulla is going to do anything in the finals or not. Tricky goes down with that shoulder injury early on, and they were not the same team when they saw Braden Trindle leaving the field. It is now going to all rest on Nico Hines' shoulders. And what have we said time and time again? We just did a Nico breakdown 1 or 2 episodes ago. The beautiful thing about that Habs pairing is Nico kind of playing underneath Trindle is allowed to kind of just be that artistic rock star who shows up and does some beautiful things. And I stood up for Nico, and I still am not getting off that Nico bandwagon. But he is a different player a lot of times when the full spotlight is on him. And it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to play the way that I think he can play. And I think we've watched him play before without Tricky there. For the Raiders, hats off to him. Hats off to the Green Machine. Because I know that they are a little demoralized not playing finals after being the minor premiers last year. But they came at Cronulla. That was not a team. They took on Sticky's character, his just drive and doggedness, and that was really fun to watch. If you're a Raiders fan, Willow, the rest of my family down there in the nation's capital, you have to be proud of this team because they really showed up in a match against a team that really needed it, and they were the team that looked like they wanted it more, which is hard to believe. And kind of sad to say for a team that's fighting for a top 4 playoff spot. But congrats to the Raiders getting a hard-fought victory. Eels 32, Cowboys 30. That Eels kryptonite for the Cows continues. My gosh, I don't even know what to say about the Cows. You know how much I like Toddy Payton, but thank God he's already bald. Because this club, what they do week in and week out, when you have no idea what you're going to get from them, they had everything to play for. They pretty much could have put the dogs to sleep. I hate saying that term. They could have put them to sleep. And instead, they find a way to let the Eels just play with them and play with them and play with them. And then what do you see? They lose the game. That was just, you know what? Ronald Volkman better get a contract with somebody because I've got to say this guy might be the best player for the Eels all season, and he was never really in the equation. It was supposed to be Jonah Peasant and Mitch that were going to be the Habs, and to me, Volkman has been the best player. Him and Iongi have been the best players all season for the Eels. But that to me was really, really strange. And like I said, beyond frustrating if you're a Cows fan. But it was, but that's the thing about the blue and gold right now. Dom, be proud of your boys because they are not quitting. But I will say this. And I mean this. I know we're trying to protect players. But the game should not be decided on a guy reaching out to prevent Mitchell Moses from throwing the ball out and catching his nose and getting a penalty that they win the game on that. That to me on a game that was beyond exciting, one that I by every means was locked into, was pretty anticlimactic. Watching Mitch kicking that 2-pointer to pretty much give the Eels that did not fit with the rest of that game. And I hated it. Like I said, more power that the Eels, they fought hard enough to get that victory, but the way they got it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But congratulations to the Eels, and hey, Cows fans, I'm sorry. You guys better be on some type of high blood pressure medicine because this team will kill you. They might kill you. Warriors 40, Broncos 6. Waz go to Vegas and turn it into a home game. I don't know what it is about the Waz going up to Suncorp and to Brisbane and just taking over the joint. They just continue to go out there and look like they are a real threat. I don't care what Bulldog says. This team is a real threat to win the competition. And then this season gets even worse for Brisbane. After the match, Madge is finally pointing fingers to an extent, I guess you could say, that he knows where the problem is. But, for the last 6 weeks, he's been deflecting. And finally now he's saying he knows there's a problem that he can fix. And, I I've had my ins with Madge on this show. And we know that he's got a timeline before his act kind of wears out on clubs and on sides. But to talk that the Broncos are talking about giving him an extension and looking at malcontents on this club, about possibly moving players on, and the talk I'm hearing that Ezra Mann might be on the freaking, on the radar for the Rabbitohs. This is a guy, Ezra Mann, that right now is just not meshing with Madge, right? But what was this, just, 3 years ago? The guy was about ready to be the MVP of the grand final. He was about ready. He had 3 tries in the first half. And yes, he's had some off-field problems. You know, you got young guys, too much responsibility, and they're still young men making bad decisions, him and Reach, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, I can't believe you're talking about possibly moving Ezra Mann on. He should be a foundation piece you're looking at building around. His chemistry with Reese is something that is special with that club. And it'll just, you know, like I said, Brisbane is not my club, but my job is to actually be truthful on this show. I'm not in the back pocket of the NRL, so there's nobody putting a thumb on me of what I can and can't say. But I'll tell you this right now. If they blow some of this team up to try to say that to keep Madge up there, they're insane. You guys are crazy up in Brisbane if you think that should be the case. But I just went off on a tangent there. Let's go back and be positive. Waz continue to roll. They don't care who's in the halves. They're going to take care of business and beat people down. So, big victory again for the New Zealand boys. Knights 36, Titans 26. The boys from the Hunter making it 3 in a row. Gagai, Marju, Sharpie, both getting doubles. All 3 of them getting doubles. Yeah. I'm going to say this right now. I will say this, and knocking on wood with it. My favorite club might be right now to watch the Newcastle Knights. The attack that this team has from long distance and the thoroughbreds they have, Sharp, Dom Young, Kalen Ponga, they can strike from any place on the field. They are a team right now, like I said just a few minutes ago, are my dark horse of causing some destruction in the finals. They're in now, so somebody's going to have to face them. And you better make the top 4. That's all I'm saying. You don't want to see them that first round of the playoffs. But big victory. They just impressed me. This team lost 2 of their most important players and haven't skipped a beat. And that's to me what Justin Holbrook has brought. And that is why he is up there for me for being the coach of the year. He has just given this team steel, which we haven't seen a Newcastle team have for a very, 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 very long time. And finally, Dragons 24, Tigers 22, the Red V making it 2 in a row, and throw more water into that sinking Tiger ship. And then when it comes out of it, Adam Dewey injures his shoulder. I think I know which play it actually happened on. He started going like my boy Rodney Dangerfield from Caddyshack. My arm. Where's Noonan? It was pretty incredible. But, you know, like I said, I still just can't believe that Tyrell Sloan is being shown the door right now for the Dragons. This guy has 8 tries in his last 8 games, 3 straight games with a try. He's just... He is becoming the player that I think the Red V thought they had a year or 2 ago. It was almost just too much for him to be the fullback, but he's found his place right now. And I think it is going to be a real problem that they're letting him go. I know he's signed. He's going over to Castleford, and that team's also a dumpster fire right now. The Tigers over in the Super League. I don't think they can change it now. I don't know if they have the money to change it right now. But Tyrell Sloan has been maybe, everyone's talking about the Twins there, but Tyrell Sloan to me is really starting to be that guy. And you kidding me? The way that the Dragons are right now, where they're actually starting to trend upwards, he does not seem like one of the guys you want to jettison from the ship. That's me. But congratulations. It has been such a tough season for St. George. It even puts a smile on my face to see them getting some positive result. They are playing for Dean Young, and that is huge. But I'm going to say something right now. Broncos better get themselves together, because that wooden spoon, the Dragons are chasing you, and they see you, and they're how should I say, increasing tempo to catch up. So it's going to be a huge weekend to see what these two teams do, because if somehow the Dragons beat the Bulldogs, they may go over the top of the Broncos before this thing is all said and done. And may pass them. So that's all I'm saying. But really incredible round. Now, as we go into the deep dive of round 24, it gave us drama. It gave us everything that we want as we get towards the end of the season. Incredibly tight matches. But it also showcased to me two clubs right now that are in two different trajectories. And those two clubs, as you can guess, are the Sydney Roosters and the Manly Seagulls. One club just took over the top of the mountain, as the great Ric Flair would say, and the other one is in a free fall. The other one, to me, has been like watching a soap opera back in the mid-'80s over here in the divided states. It has just been up and down. And I'm not talking, listen, get your minds out of the gutter, shedheads. Get your minds out of the gutter. But to me, two players have been the catalyst in making and breaking their club seasons. And those players to me are Daly Cherry Evans and Luke Brooks. All right, I know you instantly are saying, did the Shedder just say Luke Brooks? And you better believe I just said Luke Brooks. To me, what's funny is that DCE is a guy that has affected both of these clubs. And we all remember, and we don't want to go back to thinking about that last year, about the DCE saga with Manly. But are you going to really try to sit and look me in the face and tell me that if DCE wasn't still wearing the 7 for Manly, that they would not have pulled out of this free fall and lost 6 in a row? Don't think so. I think if DCE is still there, and this is nothing against Jamal Fogarty, but no matter how well Jamal has played the last couple of seasons when he was with the Green Machine, he is not anywhere close to the player of DCE. All right? And DCE, having his thumb on the blueprint of being a Seagull, he would have done something to kind of break that free, especially if he's working with Foz, especially if it's foreign and DCE. And then that makes you also ask the question, I'm not going to go in a deep dive about Manly and DCE. If DCE gets wind and knows that Foz may be the head coach for 2026, three rounds in, does he go to the Chooks? And that's something that, we'll never know. But it makes you think about it. It makes you think. But as much as I don't want to talk about DCE and Manly, it all kind of goes together. But he made the move. And that's all you can say. But he showed himself this last weekend, did he not? The oldest legs in the NRL are the legs that carry them to the victory over the Penrith Panthers, scoring 2 tries on those 2 twigs. And I'm going to say this right now, being possibly the biggest key player on the field. And let's think about this for a second. James Tedesco was not in the side. We know Teddy's been the captain there forever. And he's always been the calming factor, as you can say, for the Sydney Roosters. Especially since he's been there and assumed the captaincy. But that's what you get with DCE. You've got a guy that's seen everything. The guy's 37 years old, right? 37. And I'm going to ask you right now. You tell me, shedheads. You send me a message. When was the last time we saw DCE leave a game because of an injury? I cannot remember such a thing. The guy made 32 tackles in the game against Penrith, too, by the way. 32 tackles. So he's in the play. But it is what it is. And the guy produces time and time again. A lot of people thought last year going into it when Ches was mentioned as possibly moving to the Chooks, was this going to be a problem in a couple different ways? One, how would that pairing go with him and Hollywood Walker? Sammy Walker, was he going to be the guy that kind of threw everything off of the mix? Was he going to stunt the growth of Walker? And I don't know if we knew for sure if that was going to be the case. Was he going to do that? Was he going to be the 7? Was he going to be the 6? And it seems to me like at the beginning of the season, there was just a tad bit of a problem. The Roosters just did not seem like they were comfortable. And I don't know if they weren't comfortable because we didn't know if we were going to defer to Sam or if we were going to, defer to Ches, what we were going to do. But you know what? That's the type of stuff that happens when you mess with the Habs pairings like that. But what people seem to forget is when you bring in a veteran like Daly Cherry Evans, who's a winner, he's the type of guy that can take you over the hump. And you bring a guy like that in, not for the first 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds of a season. You bring in Daly Cherry Evans for the stretch. You bring Daly Cherry Evans in for the finals. You bring him in situations like we just talked about, if your captain goes down, that he is the type of guy that kind of, how should I say this, calms the waters. I was going to say something about a coach that played in the NFL or a coach in the NFL that had a saying, but none of you guys are going to understand it, so we'll leave that alone. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what it's about. And that is what the whole DCE experience and experiment has been about, is to get the Chooks over the hump. And the thing is, yes, it started a little clunky in the beginning of the season, right? It started a little clunky with the offense. But they're the hottest team right now in the competition. They are moving and grooving and shaking. Since round 15, how do we say this? I guess that was June 12th. They have won 8 in a row. They have beaten 2 clubs that they have had the hardest time beating in the last 5 years, being the Melbourne Storm and the Penrith Panthers. The hoodoo has been totally nixed out of that, which we just watched last weekend. Sammy Walker's possibly playing the best football that he's played since maybe ever. And I know a lot of that has to do with state of origin as well, but you're crazy if you're not thinking it's not watching and playing with DCE. Hasn't shown him a lot. The way that first off, how you treat your body, right? That's just some of the toughest thing that some of these younger players have, is how to stay healthy and what to do to keep your body at its best and peak form. And I think that Walker is learning all of that stuff from him. It's going to be interesting because right now he's got them exactly where they brought Chaz in for. They brought him to do what you need to do in the finals, and that is hopefully to lift that trophy, possibly win the minor premiership, and you know what? They've got 3 games left to try to shore that up. Now, the problem for them is they've got 2 tough teams coming up in those last 3. They've got the Finns and they've got the Bunnies. So we're really going to see going down the stretch, like I said, if this experiment is coming up trumps. And I hate to say that term, but yes, coming up trumps. Because that's why you brought him in. That's why Chaz is there. And none of us are going to know if this experiment really, until the grand final, is all aces or not. But I'll say this right now, if I'm buying stock after what I saw this last weekend, and those old legs were the legs that took them over the finish line, I'm feeling pretty good about my purchase right now with Daly Cherry Evans. Now, let's flip the coin. Unfortunately, I know I've got loyal supporters that listen from the northern beaches, but let's talk about that other side of the coin, and that would be the Manly Sea Eagles. And I'm going to say this right now. If you love amusement parks, the Manly Sea Eagles season is being in the front car. No, let's not even say the front car. The rear car of the most violent roller coaster that you've ever experienced. And you know, if you've ridden roller coasters, being in the back car, you can't see anything. You just get jerked around and thrown around for the 2 minutes the ride takes, right? You come out of there with whiplash and bruises. There you go. That is what the Manly season has been like, being in the rear of a violent roller coaster. They started the season 0-3 under old Siebes, and then we know what happened there. The power brokers got out the guillotine and game, set, match for Siebes. Because then Foz appeared. The old head that was Manly through and through. Yes, I know he played at Gold Coast, and that's where I got my picture with Foz. But, come on. I will always think of Kieran Foran as a Seagull. Like I said, to me, when he goes into the Hall of Fame or the Ring of Honor, he's always going to be a Seagull in my eyes. But then Foz comes in, and the club wins 4 straight. They win 9 of the next 12 from round 5 to round 17. And then something happens. And you know, I said 2 players a few minutes ago. They lose Luke Brooks to a season-ending knee injury. And now let's talk about Luke Brooks for a second. Some of you don't pay attention to Luke Brooks. But Luke Brooks is the old maligned Tiger. Heck, he was the West Tigers player that the team gave him a barbecue grill and said thank you for his service and showed him the door. That's right, not a car, not a Rolex. No, they gave him a barbecue grill. All right? Since he arrived at Manly, though, I will say this about Luke Brooks. He seems to have reawakened into a standpoint that the spotlight, which was always on him when he was with the Tigers, seemed to have drifted off of him. And it was more on the back of Chaz and some of the other guys. But he seems to be almost like Nico Hines at the standpoint where he seemed to be able to play a lot more free because of the spotlight being off of him. But I'll say this, and I've watched Luke Brooks a lot. It is the best football, and I was not a Luke Brooks believer, because don't forget, they said he was the next Andrew Johns when he first started playing the game, right? Which probably was a death sentence from the beginning when somebody says that about you. But what was even more crazy about Luke Brooks is how incredibly well he took to Kieran Foran and the way that he started to play football after Foz became the head coach of that club. He became reborn. And he was already playing probably better football than he played the last 4 or 5 years with the Tigers, even before Foran became the coach. And the numbers just don't lie what the difference was once Foz took over. And listen as I say this. From round 5 through round 17, Manly scored 349 points after Foz took over and started to gel with Luke Brooks. That's an average of 29 points a game, right? Brooks goes down against Melbourne in round 17, and since then they've lost 6 straight. And the eye-opening part for me is how they cratered offensively, all right? 29 points a game, all right, from rounds 5 through 17. Since round 18, they've scored 96 points in 6 matches. That's an average of 16 points a game. 16 points a game. That's a 13-point swing in what the offense was with Brooks and what it has been since Brooks. They've fallen from 6th place, where they were at in round 17, to out of the top 10. They're sitting right now, I guess they're in 10th after round 24. And they're out of finals contention. That is huge. And no one would have thought, but to me, what's even more crazy about just the things that I just read off to you, Shedheads, is no one's talking about that. I have not heard one pundit that gets paid big time money, way more than your Shed is making doing this incredible podcast. No one's mentioned that. No one's mentioned that Luke Brooks going down was the hole in the Manly ship that they couldn't repair. Couldn't repair. Everybody's been talking about Walsh. Well, Walsh has been in there in a 13-point swing. That is how important Luke Brooks was for that side. Well, listen, the only thing I can say about all of it, don't ever forget who showed you the light. That Luke Brooks was not, it wasn't Tom Trbojevic, it was Luke Brooks. That was the reason that Manly has fallen off. His play in the halves with Jamal Fogarty had been everything. And again, Fogarty did the kicking, Fogarty kind of set everything else, and Luke was able just to be wildly at his best. Run out of it, make plays, and since he's left, they just looked to shelve themselves. Now, in the long run, is Walsh going to be a great player? He is. But, well, we don't know that for sure. I shouldn't say he is. He's got all the markings that he's going to be a special one. But the thing I can tell you right now is Manly's season ended when Luke Brooks went down. That's the only thing I can say. So, two players, two different trajectories. But, hey, that's why we love it. That's why we follow it, right? Now, Shedheads, as we go into the 40-20, the Rugby League world got blindsided going into last weekend. After we recorded this show, news dropped on Friday that Billy Slater, who has knocked back, let's sign a long-term deal to be the Maroons head coach. No, let's not do that. Billy Slater, who said, let's just take it from year to year, has resigned and stepped down as the head coach for the Queensland Maroons. I can't believe it. I'm saying this right now as I talk on this podcast. That was something I would have never thought. Because I know how competitive Billy Slater is. And the way that the Maroons lost last year, or I should say this year's State of Origin, the competitive nature to me just said, Billy's going to be back for one more year. He comes in, they win it next year. I can see him walking away then. But that gut-wrenching of a series, to lose at Suncorp like that in Game 3, to me, I just would have never thought that Billy the Kid would say, I'm done with this. I've done what I can. I feel like I've left the state in a better position than it was before I got here. But I did not see it. I did not see it coming. Now, I will say this, though. What really kind of makes me go, even though we won't say it, I think what we're setting up right now is that Billy Slater will be the head coach for the Melbourne Storm in 2028. Now, to me, Slater could do that and coach 2027, the Maroons, one more ride with, trying to get back, State of Origin from the Blues. But I do think the long term, the long run is Billy Slater. I think you'll see him next year coaching more and more and more with Craig Bellamy down with the Storm. But to me, what this also does is it gives Bellyache one last ride at the helm for 2027. And it also lets Bellyache experience the sheer craziness of what Las Vegas is going to be like for the Purple to arrive, the Storm to hit the beaches of Las Vegas. And I got to admit, I cannot wait to see Craig Bellamy in Vegas and just see what his reaction is going to be to that freaking craziness. And I stress craziness of what he's about ready to experience. And I know this. I know the Melbourne Storm want a Melbourne man to be their next head coach. And to me, Billy checks all those boxes. There's not another guy, the reason I say not another guy, because I know that Cameron Smith does not want that week-to-week toll that coaching the NRL takes. I know he has it as his advisor's role with the Brisbane Broncos, and I think he's really good with that because he can still be around the game. He can go in and do some TV work, but it doesn't take over his life. That week-to-week mundane, I'm in it for 9 months straight, from coaching to preseason to all that stuff. And I just don't think Cameron Smith wants that. But to me, it is what Billy Slater has. It is giving him that goal. It's giving him that focus. And it lets him really just dive in and build the team the way he wants, instead of just, for a 6-week period of time, trying to win 3 matches. And I just think Billy's he's a special guy all the way around. And I really believe that the Storm really continue to stay a dominant club if they can get Billy Slater as the head coach. Now the wild card that rose out of all of this story that just dropped the last day or so is word that Wayne Bennett, that's right, Clint Eastwood, is throwing his hat back in the ring to saying that he is beyond willing to coach the Maroons for 2027. And the thing about this is, the moment that Wayne Bennett says that he wants to coach the Maroons, Wayne Bennett's going to coach the Maroons. Like, what guy is going to say, no, don't pay attention to Wayne, I'm your guy? No. Wayne is Maroon through and through. He's a special guy, especially when it comes to Origin, where he just finds a way to keep the spotlight off his players. He somehow takes it all upon himself, usually not saying anything, and it just lets the guys do their thing. To me, it's Wayne's job now, right? The question just is, who's going to be his assistant coaches going forward? But that to me was the wild card of all of this. Because some people can say, well, Billy didn't sign a long-term deal or a 2 or 3 year deal, Billy's probably not, there's always that chance that he's not going to coach. But Wayne's saying, hey, and the word is South Sydney is totally fine with this. They got Hornby there. So he'll take over when Wayne's doing his State of Origin thing, and it gives them a chance to see maybe what the future is going to be like if Hornby's going to be the head coach of South Sydney when Wayne steps aside. I don't know. But I do know that Ben Hornby will be an incredible coach, and he works well with Wayne. So I don't think they don't miss a beat if Wayne goes off to coach State of Origin. So that is just fascinating news to me all the way around. But I'll say this right now, what it does for me instantly is I cannot wait for Origin 1 in 2027. Can't wait. I'm already thinking about it. A first-year coach against a guy that's been there for 98 years, give that to me every day of the week. But, yeah, really strange. But I do think exactly what I just said, that Billy Slater will be the coach of the Storm in 2028. Now, the Grim Reaper of injuries beyond reared its ugly head, Shedheads, this last round. It has been murderer's row when it comes to the injury front all the way around, and it's affected a lot of teams. We saw Reece Walsh goes down again. He already had a gigantic boot on his foot before the game was even over. High ankle sprain, surgery, 8 weeks he's on the shelf, and that probably takes him out of the World Cup. So maybe one of the most marquee players in the game will not be in the game when the World Cup comes, middle, end of October. Luke Metcalf. We got to watch, how many times do we have to watch that commercial on Fox League about them saying, Luke Metcalf, and talking about the trials and the tumultuous career that he's had so far with injuries and battling back. And we get back-to-back weeks, a guy hurting his hamstring, kicking a goal? What? I cannot believe it. I told Mrs. Shedadamas, I've never seen anything like it. Guys who have been watching the game way more than me, to see guys injure their hamstrings in back-to-back weeks kicking is just, it's insane. But Metcalf now out, that hamstring again. It looks like he's out till the finals. But the question is, if Marie Martin comes back, hits the ground running, and this team just continues to power through, you're not going to see Metcalf. You're not. You're not going to take the chance of, if Marie Martin comes back round 26, plays 2 good games like that, you're not. That's just not what Webster is. He's not going to go in there and mess with that. And congratulations to coach getting extension to 2032, Andrew Webster. But he's not going to tinker with that. He's not going to mess with that. I think he wants Marie Martin to be his halfback too. And why would you not leave Marie Martin in if he's playing well? Because Metcalf is going to be gone in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. You know what I mean? After the season. So, but yeah, just all the fanfare. Fox, I don't know how much Fox paid to try to make this commercial on Luke Metcalf, and he doesn't even finish the game on, in Brisbane. So, Adam Dewey. I remember I said that when we were doing the breakdown of the round. I know exactly when that happened with that shoulder. And a lot of people said it was going to be hit and miss if he was going to make it through the end of the season. Well, he's not. Shoulders and season-ending shoulder surgery. He's done. It gets better for Benji and the boys, doesn't it? The jungle. Let's not even talk about the jungle right now. But yeah, and the sad part about Adam Dewey, he's out now through the season. And like Reese Walsh, he will not be suiting up for Lebanon in the World Cup. So really sad for Adam Dewey, because I know he really was looking forward to playing for Lebanon. Paul Alamati, hamstring. And they don't even have a timetable for him yet. So I don't know if that's a matter of they want to rest him till the finals before they bring him back or what. But there's no numbers about how long he's out for. Dane Gagai having that incredible first half for Newcastle. And now he doesn't even come back in the second half. And it looks like it's 1 to 2 weeks that hamstring is. But that was sad to see, because he was playing a blinder over first half for the Knights. We just talked about Manly. Joey Walsh, fractured jaw. Have no idea how long he's going to be out. Still to be determined. So Manly again. Turbo comes back. But then Walsh is out. So their halves are in upheaval. Clint Gutherson done for the season with his knee. Some people say, is that the swan song? Will we see Gutho next season with the red V? I would say yes, but his season is over. The one that I think a lot of people talked about when it happened, Braden Trindle for the Shockies. We're going to see if Cronulla's in real deep trouble, because all the pressure is now going to be on Nico Hines again to continue to play the way that he's played. And the way that Cronulla's played the last 2 weeks, it makes you wonder what the heck's going to happen with them. But they're saying he's not going to be back to the finals, Trindle. So there's a lot. That was a lot. That, like I said, soap opera stuff right there. That Grim Reaper, that scythe got its share of blood this last week. Now, there's some good news. And one of the great news articles, or whatever you want to say, news blogs or bloops or blots or whatever you want to say, I don't know what they call it anymore, that is dropping, is that we might have Latrell Mitchell on the horizon of return for South Sydney. This is game-changing stuff, because all of us know if Latrell is healthy, if Latrell is fresh, which he is, and he can come back to play at 85, 90%, that changes everything. Because Cody Walker becomes a different player with Latrell in there. David Fafita is going to be insane. This team takes on a totally different look and an ominous presence in the game if he is back. If Latrell can get through this, get into the mix, and return for South Sydney, yeah, this just changes all the finals right now. We could get a round 3 of the Knights against the Rabbitohs. And give me that every day of the week. That was one of the best matches we saw this last season. So, But that's good. That's really, really good news. But we also have some big names. Tedesco's back. Harry Grant's back. Travojevic, I just said Turbo's back. Bradman Best is back. And the one that I said earlier, Casey McLean, is back to partner with Milky Jenkins. So it's going to be interesting. These pieces that are going to be added back to these clubs are going to make a world of difference. And I can't wait to see how that happens and how these teams go with these big pieces back. Now, for Willow and my Green Machine faithful, I can't end my 40-20 without talking about a big game that's going on in the nation's capital and what it represents, and that's Josh Papali's last game, Big Poppa. His last game at home for the Green Machine. I will tell you this right now. I think the game comes on at 3 a.m. my time. Yeah, I think. Well, I will be watching it live because I want to see Poppa run out for the last time at home. I want to see what that is like. I still remember watching Jarrett Croker play his last game at home for the Raiders. And to me, Poppa is one of those guys that is going to be in the pantheon of the greats that's ever played for the Raiders. I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to say this right now. Your Shedadamas, yeah, that's right, the hard man himself, might actually shed a tear when he sees Poppa run on the field for that last time. Because I will remember Poppa, for me, it goes back to when he kind of burst on the scene in 2011 as a young guy, right? Not a small guy, I'm not saying that, a young guy. And I will never forget his run-ins with Paul Gallen. You know, Gal loves to think of himself as being the apex predator on the field when he's there, right? He'd throw blows with his own mom if he had to, right? And I remember Big Poppa just not backing down a step, not an inch from Gal. And that didn't sit well with Gal, right? That this young guy is getting up in his face, and they had a heated rivalry for years. And I always remember that. You know, you're watching something special when you watch a guy when he's young like that go up against an apex veteran like that and not flinch, right? And to me, that was Poppa through and through. And that is why he's been beloved, not just with the Green Machine and not with just the Raider faithful, right? Team Milk, with everybody. You know, there's a reason I'm going to stay up until 3 a.m. to watch it live and not watch the replay, because I want to see him run out on the field. I want to see the fanfare leading up to the kickoff. I want to watch Sticky get emotional at that moment too. This is a guy, and this doesn't happen much. There are great players and great people, and a lot of times players don't check both. They're either a great player or a great person. Poppa is both. The way that he stays late, is the last guy that leaves the field, signing autographs, taking pictures. The way that Ricky has him look over and look after players who are going through tough times. He's just that dude. He's that guy. He changes an entire locker room, just his presence there. He's a special one. And I would not be a real podcast or a guy that loves this game if I would not mention this man's last home game and his retirement that he announced too, that this is his last season in the NRL. So cannot wait to watch the festivities this weekend, but I just want to nod my hat from this podcast to knowing when I see greatness. Josh Papali, Big Poppa, congratulations, my friend, for an incredible career, and I hope you get it. I hope you get a double and kick a goal in this game coming up this weekend. Now, as we go in around 25, these games are going to be off the chain, off the hook, whatever you want to say. Can't wait, because it starts off right off the bat with a new invigorated Storm Club playing at home against the Panthers Thursday night, matter of hours. This game has all of the fixings. We got a Thanksgiving meal on a Thursday. Hey, that's when it happens, right? But I'm going to say this right now. I'm taking the Penrith Panthers. I'm going back to that Casey McLean inclusion with the club. I think that's going to be the difference maker. I got the Panthers in a tight one, but they beat the Storm. Friday, Broncos versus the Raiders. Big Poppa's last home game. They are going to be out for blood because I think that the Green Machine and their faithful still hold it over the Brisbane Broncos, that they went down there and got a game over on them where a lot of people feel that they won that game, that the refs kind of might have taken it from them. I would not be surprised if there is violence and they don't make a statement beating up on the Broncos. It's going to be one to watch, but like I said, I'd love to see Poppa get 2 in that one. But I'm taking the Raiders. Eels versus the Dolphins. I know the Eels have been playing well, upsetting people, but the Finns are not going to be up for that. It's going to be up in Queensland. I think the Dolphins win, and they win handily. Saturday, Sea Eagles versus the Knights. Old boys day for the Knights. You know how much they love Manly. I think the Knights are going to inflict some pain too. A little bit kind of like the Raiders to the Broncos. I think Newcastle wins, and they win running away. Warriors versus the Rabbitohs. This game is going to be a big-time heavyweight, let's throw haymakers match. Don't know for sure if Latrell's going to play or if he's going to come off the bench, but I do think that South Sydney is ready to get in the tussle, and you know the Waz have no problem with that. I'm going to still take the Warriors. I think they have just too much right now. I think they are a top 3 side, and they're going to fight to try to get in the top 2. I got the Waz. Bulldogs versus the Dragons. Dragons have made it 2 in a row. Bulldogs better win, but I'm going to say something. This is my upset of the week. I've got the Dragons upsetting the Bulldogs. That's right. The Red V make it 3 in a row and pull off the upset. Sunday, Sharks versus the Titans. This is not the game for me where we're going to find out if Nico Hines is ready to take them to the promised land, but I do think he has enough to take them to the promised land over the Titans. I've got the Sharkies over the Titans. And then finally, Tigers versus the Roosters. What do I always say? When all the money is going one direction, shedheads, go the other, you'd be crazy. You would be crazy. I've got the Chooks, then the Chooks, then the Chooks. And did I say that I've got the Chooks? Heck yeah. I've got the Roosters over the Tigers. We've got the Panthers, the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Knights, the Waz, the Dragons, the Shackies, and the Chooks as our picks. And my gun of the round, come on, I just did a deep dive on the guy. Daly Cherry Evans, 2 tries, 83 running meters, 2 line breaks, 1 line break assist, 3 tackle breaks, 32 tackles made, and 343 kicking meters. Chaz was on fire. I can't believe that this guy is going to go to Hull and go and finish his career in the Super League. The only reason I can think he wants to do this is he wants to take his family abroad. They're a young family, and he wants to show them England. But are you trying to tell me this guy doesn't have the goods to go in there and to change a club that really would need a veteran like that? Whatever. It's his career, but he definitely was the gun of round 24. Shedheads, like I said, we're marching to the finals. We're marching to the finals together. Hope you're ready for this weekend. I think we've got some real big matches that are going to be fun to watch. Hope you're doing well out there. Like I tell you time and time again, stay out of trouble, don't get caught. But until next week, I'm Corey Jackson, your Shedadamas. This is Outside the Sheds. Can't wait to talk to you then. See ya.
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.